I'm here not to boast about my activity, but I must stress that after 5 years, I have returned to the Central Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, taking regular classes at the MPhil PhD sessions. This is my second semester. Not that I was not invited previously. After a gap of several years, I am back simply because some of the, rather not some, but several of PhD holders to whom I served as supervisor are now manning the fort. So I thought, why not try a few more years and render my services to the department. And it so happens that I am also associated with the Center for Media Research. I am on their, one of their major committees. I will not elaborate. Having said that, I am slightly worried as to how long I can sustain your interest. But still, since I have been given the task of presenting what is known as keynote speech, I'll try to finish it within 20 to 25 minutes. I have a written text. I know that in some countries, they have a different practice, unlike our parliament. In many countries, in democratic countries, the finance minister just proposes the budget and says, Mr. Chair, please consider this as having been entirely read. And it would be greeted with thumping of the tables. I am not going to do that. But if I overstretch my time, I will just shorten it. But consider that this text having been fully read. So I will submit the text later to the Central Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. Regarding the introductory lines, I must say that having been associated with Tribhuvan University's bachelor's, master's, and at the highest level of journalism and mass communication education, that is MPhil, right from 1980, the program that we are attending right now is the best, biggest ever I have known as far as journalism department is concerned. Now I begin. The title of my presentation is Age of Multi-Channels and Audience Fragmentation. Search for niche content. South Asia has come a long way since the 18th century, when the first newspapers began to stamp their footprints on the world's most populous region, accounting for every fifth of humanity. Idealized and idolized since more than 200 years as the fourth power or fourth estate, newspapers and their later day cousins in the broadcast landscape, followed by digital channels in the new millennium, are seen as contributing to making or marring individual and institutional images, just as they highlight issues that impact sizable sections of audiences. One of the world's 20 oldest existing independent states, Nepal suffered a severe setback in making an early debut in journalism, whereas the rest of the region witnessed the sprouting of newspapers in dozens of languages by the mid-19th century. The people of independent Nepal had to wait for nearly more than 120 years after India for the first news publication to take off in 1901 in Nepal. That is 50 years after the first printing press arrived in the country. Moreover, it took another 50 years for other newspapers to reach readers in the early 1950s. Whereas the British colonial rulers allowed private parties to operate printing presses and publish newspapers, The Rana regime in Nepal was vehemently against private sector newspapers, and hence the delay. Stringent law and stiff punishment notwithstanding, the media history of much of South Asia starts in the first half of the 19th century. India's first newspaper Hickey's Bengal Gazette, was brought out in January 1780. Within the next 2 decades, more than a dozen languages had newspapers circulating in the newsstands. Sri Lanka, too, broke into newspapering early in 1802. Bangladesh newspaper records show the first news publication in 1818, whereas Pakistan newspaper annals produced Lahore Chronicle as its pioneer newspaper that took off in 1822. Afghanistan pioneered a newspaper in 1873. That is nearly 30 years before Nepal. Nepal in 1901, the Maldives in 1932, and Bhutan in 1967 have their newspaper history in the 20th century. Because of their arrival in only the first half of the 20th century, the broadcasting media did not see as much a gap in their introduction in these countries. There was a little gap, but not much. And now comes the era of multi-channels in the communication landscape, inaugurating a variety of content choices, which enables the publics to pick their options in accordance with personal needs and specific interests, time being a restrictive factor for any living being. Receivers give their attention to the media contents that serve their interests the best. The theory of multiple media choices and audience migrations sees fragmentation of audiences as an inevitable effect. Multiple avenues encourage migration to new interests and communication channels as curiosity expands and options create new avenues. Options are always power for audiences who are liberated from few or censored choices. This is the law of human nature. The more the choices in channels and contents, the greater are the prospects of diverse voices being heard and promoting frequent interactions essential for productive participatory democracy. Dissenting views find space in their case. The theory would be that variety in options offers opportunities for individuals and groups to cultivate tastes they previously had not developed or could not even dream of. Opportunities are new and now accessible for acquiring new knowledge and skills that satisfy curiosity, address needs, or do both. Complete dependence on few channels gets loosened in a sphere of multiple choices. The publics are offered a range of services through multiple channels and easily available channels, often at reasonably affordable prices. Content narrowcasting and fragmentation of information seekers create competitive climes for news media, and free speech, formal and non-formal, covers non-media communication as well. In this, I must say that whenever we talk of journalism and mass communication, please, we must note that most of our prescribed textbooks in any university in Nepal that offers journalism, media, communications, or such other related subjects, theories are always there. Skills are not emphasized too much. Either we must change the textbooks entirely, and the people, the scholars, the reputed scholars that we quote Or there must be a separate course for skills only. I know that on many occasions they say skill is important. It is true. Then throw away all those books. Shannon and Weaver, they don't mention anything much on content of skills. So there are diverse subjects. I know in the course of our discussions today and tomorrow, there will be people here who will be discussing. The importance and significance cannot be overlooked. But core and pure skills mean something, and theory means something, and theory is for practice. To speak the truth is theory if you always engage in lie. If you don't lie, the theory is practice. झूठ बोल्यो भने के भयो theory भयो कि के भयो भन्ने आउँछ. Having said this, I continue. Professional gatekeeping presumes neutral and objective views. Journalists are expected to be neutrally distanced agents aiming at fair reporting and abiding by professional ethics. It enjoins upon them to take into consideration their target audience when giving coverage to events and personalities. Credible media serve as reliable points of reference. They stand as valued institutions that the public can bank upon when it comes to news and views on contemporary affairs. Lord Buddha's advice to learn to question and cross-check his own statements underscore purity of facts and intelligent, inquisitive mind. More than 2,600 years ago, Lord Buddha said, you cross-verify first what I say, and then check others also. That was, again, I repeat, 2,600 years ago. Regarding the 1990 Iraq War, for instance, American television journalist Leslie Stahl points out, I quote him, the news media became so unpopular that at one point, 62% in a Washington Post poll said that the Allies should bomb a Baghdad hotel even if it were filled with Western reporters. They said that. Washington poll found that nearly 2/3 of the people in America wanted the hotel to be bombed because they were bombarded with misinformation, if not entirely disinformation. This is someone taller than me, by skin fairer to me, much fairer than me, and perhaps wearing some pair of blue eyes. Gallup poll in 2022 showed that Americans tend to trust newspapers significantly more than television. But on the whole, only 16% of Americans had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers. Only 16%. This was down from 25% in 2012, 35% in 2002. I repeat, in 2002, 35% of Americans trusted the media. In 2012, only 25%. And today, only 16% of Americans trust CNN, Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, Miami Herald, New York Times, etc. And all the major 4 channels, broadcast channels, CBS, ABC, CNN as well. India's political analyst Brahma Chalani, in his column recently, wrote, when reporting on any mass tragedy, a basic rule of journalism is to be sensitive to the victims and those who are grieving. The coverage of India's devastating second wave of COVID-19 in 2021 is a case in point. Western media were filled with images of dead bodies and other graphic scenes that generally would not have been shown following a similar disaster in a scene in a Western country. I too agree with it. However, we must take Mr. Chalani's statement with a pinch of salt. When the Indian media cover the rest of South Asia, they do the very thing that they don't want the Western media to do upon them. That's the contradiction we have been facing. And this applies to us also. The Nepalese media allocate liberal space for entertainment, but quite a few of them give Hollywood moviedom too much space, forgetting that the movies in English are hardly ever screened at the cinema theaters anywhere outside Kathmandu Valley. These are the newspapers. We see that they are national newspapers, national broadcasting media, but they give Hollywood so much space that much of Nepalese don't know about at all. Because Hollywood movies are not screened outside Kathmandu Valley. At the most in Kathmandu Valley, once a week, not even once a week, a movie from Hollywood or some other English-speaking country is screened. Likewise, every news confined to the activity of a few districts of Nepal dominate. The widely cited Reporters Without Borders ranks Nepal top among its South Asian peers regarding Press Freedom Index. The latest Reporters Without Borders report is that Nepal tops, and what's our position is? 74th, followed by Maldives, 106th, then followed by Bhutan, 147th. This is followed by Sri Lanka's 150th position. Next comes Pakistan, 152nd. And then comes India, 159th. Bangladesh, 165th. Afghanistan, 178th, out of a list of 180 countries. And if we don't agree with this kind of rankings, then what is the solution? What are we doing? Are we accepting this? Because normally we think they have a lot of revenue, advertisement, commercial pie is big in India because of the industrial base, hi-fi, lot of thrills and frills we can see, but the rankings give them a lower status than even Pakistan, much less than Bhutan or Maldives or Nepal. And this is, I'm not boasting or saying anything, I'm just making a clinical statement here. Either we must have a new criteria assessing ourselves, or we must accept what the Paris-based Reporters Without Frontiers says. Cohesive approach and cooperation create bonds for mutual benefit. Limited market for general news whose saturated existence drives away advertisers. Now there are multiple channels, not only news media, purely cinema screens are also available, and other forms of entertainment and informations are available. That is why there are numerous, literally thousands of channels of information, entertainment, and other aspects of communication that strive to obtain advertising. And advertising revenue is definitely limited. That is why the best will survive. Now I have only 2 or 3 minutes to go. South Asian constitutions generally guarantee right to information. This has not been implemented properly in any of the South Asian countries where this has been guaranteed, including India and Nepal. A.G. Nurani, a few years ago, wrote a piece in the front line, a prominent Indian fortnightly. He criticized India's Central Information Commission for having rendered what he said is a grave disservice to the nation by ruling that the report of Lieutenant General Henderson Brooks and Brigadier Bhagat of India's military debacle in the 1962 India-China War cannot be disclosed under the Right to Information Act 2005. He regretted that information pertaining to the 1962 war could not be revealed. It was considered to be too sensitive after even nearly 5 decades. And he questioned. In 2009, our CIC, Information Commission, bars disclosure of a report of 1963, a military debacle of 1962. Are we such a substandard democracy? That's what he said. And believe me, ours is the same position. Our constitution, right from 1947, has guaranteed right to information, but still, it is cluttered with rigmaroles, and obtaining information is very difficult, and I challenge the whole audience here. I just need how much money or budget is spent on the president's uniform a year. How much money is given for entertainment of Balwata, Prime Minister's residence, and the president's. That's all, simple. If you cannot get this, I need not talk of bigger things. I'm a very small mind. So now, my last 2 paragraphs. South Asian public service broadcasting can be initiated for connectivity, perhaps South Asian. This might smack of new information and communication order of the 1970s, but maybe we can do something on promoting South Asian connectivity, because I have been monitoring some of the major newspapers of South Asia, including Sri Lanka's, Pakistan's, Bangladesh's, India's, and Nepal's, definitely. Go for the deadlines. It is not South Asia. Unless there's a big accident or a change of government, the international page covers something else. It goes to Southeast Asia or Europe or the US. Ours is also the same. Go through the English papers, it's the same. And regarding international news, the newspapers running in Nepali language do the same. And some of the major broadcasting news bulletins also monitor BBC, and verbatim they broadcast it. So it's BBC for all practical purposes, starting from Radio Nepal and Nepal television for that. So maybe we could do something, because last year the Indian government floated the idea of launching an international news media for television, a la Al Jazeera, actually. They didn't mention Al Jazeera, but Al Jazeera has carved a special space for itself. That is why it prompted BBC to launch Arabic television and the French to introduce English television in order to steal away some of Al Jazeera's audiences. Maybe our perspective has not come. First of all, we need to report on ourselves first, on Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. The mirror is there, our media. Have they covered us or not? That is, and my last paragraph, and India is not the only country in South Asia facing roadblocks against citizens seeking information that powerful forces might consider sensitive. All others, including Nepal, suffer similarly. The state should either live by the letter and spirit of the right to information or scrap it altogether. from the fundamental law of the land. Finally, my conclusion is that the new media has offered, the digital age has offered us enormous sources of information. Now people will diverge their interests. They will go for those contents that interest them the most. If we go as we are doing today, which is known as legacy media, then there will come a time when a very small, significant number of people will devote to news channels. Most of the time, they will go for other spheres of information and entertainment. The legacy media will have to remodel themselves and adapt to the times. General news will not do. In the past, when our existing leaders, they were in jail, they used to read Gorkha Patra right up to the print line, and whose editor was Gopal Prasad Bhattrai. Krishna Prasad Bhattrai's elder brother. Because they didn't have any other choices. Now there are too many choices. So we must go for specialized contents, niche marketing. Those who wish to continue legacy media, they too will have to concentrate more on what the reading audience, viewing audience, or listening audience might really be interested in. Otherwise, we are on the way out. Thank you.